How's it going, everyone? I'm Keegs, and we just saw episode 6 of the new Ahsoka series, and speaking from myself, I thought it was very close to as good as episode 5. I'm also here with Ben. Say hi, Ben, and tell me, what did you think initially of this episode?
Hello. I really liked it. Felt a little bit more low key in specific ways than I was expecting, but it was really good. I think I still like episode 4 more, but I mean
It's just
episode
because you
5
like
more.
Anakin so much.
Probably like that just emotionally like resonated with
Resonates.
me more,
Yeah.
but this episode was still really good.
Yeah, no, I really liked it. I thought the show is a little slower, or at least the episode, I should say, was a little slower in pace, but I thought it was really good because it built tension, I thought, in a very intriguing way.
Yeah, I feel like especially with the past 3 episodes, I feel like I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm like, okay, what's gonna happen? Like
Every scene, every time it changes to a new scene or a new cut, I'm always thinking like, oh my god, what's coming up next? Because it feels like any moment can be kind of a big reveal. And in fact, I think between episode 5 and 6, we have had so many ridiculous big reveals.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's something about the way that the cinematographer like lingers on scenes. It like the anticipation's like unbearable, but in a good way.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. So episode 6 though starts off with Ahsoka and Huyang, and they're being transported by the space whales, the Purgill. And really, that's like the only scene actually they're in the whole episode. But I thought it was a really good scene, really touched on the heartstrings a little bit. And also, Huyang obviously does the kind of almost, I don't want to say fourth wall break, but very meta commentary of where he starts his story off with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, which is funny because it almost makes you think like, is the entire Star Wars series is that based off of Hu Yang's memory banks? Like,
Oh,
if
that'd
he
be funny because he's been there the whole
he's
time.
been there the whole time, so there's no one better. I mean, I know originally George Lucas thought about doing it as this was an anthology for the Wills, right? So that they were speaking to history and things that had happened in the past. But I just thought it was kind of funny if Hu Yang was kind of the one telling the Wills or something over there, like what had happened previously in the galaxy.
I think another one of the ideas he had was that it would be like C-3PO and R2D2 recalling all the events and stuff like that. And then obviously like none of that plays into the movies, but I thought this was probably an intentional nod to those ideas,
Yeah,
that like the stories that we're seeing are sort of a recollection
yeah.
of some other being. So it was really cool, and I liked it. Like I could see some people like groaning, but I thought it was cute. So
I thought so too. But I mean, going back to that scene real quick, Ahsoka is kind of at the beginning, she feels like Sabine kind of betrayed her and the rest of the galaxy. And Hu Yang is like, well, I mean, that's not how she sees it. And that's obviously not the reason that she did it. Like, how do you feel about that?
well, I mean, it's consistent because something I was worried about was that Ahsoka would have this moment with Anakin and then like do a complete 180. And we did get some of that in the last episode where she was opening herself up more.
Yeah.
But here, I guess, in the time that they kind of sat on the travel time with the whales, it does seem like she's sort of been contemplating it, and it doesn't seem as judgmental to me as it would have before. It came
Yeah.
across more like
Yeah, I agree with that.
she's less worried that she made that choice and more worried about
The consequences of the
the
choice.
that, or like just the reason, because how like selfishness and stuff like that can lead to attachment, and I guess she is part of her still worried about that for Sabine. But Hu Yang makes a really good point that for Sabine she didn't have another choice, and that Ahsoka shouldn't feel bad about that. Like no amount of preparation was going to be able to change that for her.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also sort of talking to Ahsoka. Ahsoka couldn't have done anything about Anakin. I don't know that Hu Yang knows, but I think he's right. And I think also if you even go back to episode 4, she really didn't have a choice. I feel like people, when I
Oh,
say
I
people, I mean there's
totally
like a
agree.
very like small group of people that seem to think like, oh, she was super selfish, and I'm like, yeah, like I think she had to make the choice that she did. So that's why I think that Ahsoka's not like really angry about it. It's more like the reason why she did it that's concerning to her. Because if you look to a Sabine situation and you think about how the map was destroyed by Balin in the first place, it took like a little bit of getting going with the lightsaber to make that happen. Sabine wasn't going to be able to destroy it. He could have taken it from her anytime. He could have killed her, but he wanted her to join in willingly.
Yeah.
And I think the willingly part is the aspect that scares Ahsoka.
Yeah, I think that's a great take. I didn't think about it that way before, but I definitely think that makes a lot of sense. You know, she took it from Balin, who has been known to use some dark side of the Force, and that kind of probably does scare Ahsoka, that maybe Sabine is listening to these whispers on her shoulder that are edging her towards the dark side or something like that.
Yeah. And I think that those are reasonable concerns.
Yeah, I agree. I will point out that I don't know if you noticed this, but the hyperspace travel for the whales was like a lot more colorful than like normal.
I noticed that too.
Hyperspace.
They had the colorful part for the ring ship too. So
Yeah.
I think there's something to do with
The intergalaxy travel.
that, or just the speed at which they're going through the hyperspace. So like I don't think it's like a literal 1-to-1 wormhole. I think you can travel faster or slower in hyperspace,
Yeah.
to my understanding. So I think part of that is just they're going really fast, and I think that'll come into play with some of the things that are brought up later in the episode. But yeah, I really liked it. My only complaint is that I wish we got to hear Huyang's story.
Yeah, I was for a second I was like, oh man, are they gonna actually tell us the story? And then nope. But
And I also thought it was funny where Ahsoka's like, oh, part one's the best.
yeah, yeah, that was definitely a little nod and wink to the original.
It could be that, or just the way that people latch onto the first story that they heard, and especially as franchises go.
That's true.
And so people always feel like the first one's the best. So
yeah,
that
the
that
first
could
one
apply.
that they were exposed to,
Yeah,
like
I think that's probably where like his head was at with that line. Because there's a few ways you could interpret that, like original trilogy, that was the first one that was made, or did they mean the prequel
episode
trilogy?
1?
Because or literally episode 1 or episode 4, or likely like in universe he's talking about like Jedi galactic history. So part 1 would have been like before the Old Republic, probably, or during the Old Republic.
Yeah.
But I thought it was cute.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. Anyway, after that, we go over to Sabine, who's kind of in a holding cell, and in there, Balin stops by, and Sabine is, definitely really being treated as a prisoner here, and she's just making sure that Balin honors his deal. I mean, that there's not much more to that scene, I don't think. Sabine's a little worried that she's made a mistake while she's sitting in the cell.
Yeah, she's getting some time to contemplate her choice. Well, we know as the omnipotent audience that she did not make a mistake, but it's very reasonable for her to have felt that way. And Balin's not really offering any reassurance either.
No, he's just like staring at her kind of menacingly and like little grunts and groans and things. And you're like, all right, that's not helping, Balin.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, they exit hyperspace into Peridea, I think is the name of the planet, and it is, I mean, there is so much significance to this that they explain. There was a ton of lore and world building in this episode. So the first thing they mention is that this is the ancient world of the Dathomiri, right? So this is the ancient world of the Sith, I mean not the Sith, the witches from Dathomir, and I guess this is where they came from. And the fact that the rings around the planet are literally whale bones, because this is where they come to die. And is that not the most like ridiculous thing? Like that is pretty, it's pretty gruesome for an introduction.
It's gruesome, and the fact that they come there specifically for that is scary in a lot of ways for what this planet is.
Yeah.
It seems like it's very connected to the Force in a very not pleasant way.
Agreed. And I mean, if that's where the Dathomiri witches come from, it only makes sense why they're, the necromancer type magic wielders that they are, if they're coming from a essentially place of death, right? This is where they all go to die. I just thought that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and then we get in atmosphere, and it's a wasteland. And at first I couldn't decide, like, do I want this to be like a really like out there planet, like Felucia or something, where it's totally unrecognizable from the real world, or like what are they going for? But I feel like given that it's a graveyard, we'll get to it later, but they seem like in a particular hurry to get off the planet.
Agreed.
And obviously they want to leave,
Yeah,
but
because it's a wasteland.
yeah, but it feels like something else is going on.
It feels like something may have made that a wasteland and not just the whales dying in outer space, right? That's
Yeah,
definitely something has. There's something malevolent, I think, on the planet that is kind of withering away at the life force or something of the planet. And it seems like they are definitely willing to get off. And I was kind of expecting it to be something fantastical, but the fact that it's a graveyard is really interesting. You know, they want to get out of this galaxy, so it doesn't sound like this galaxy is a great place to go and explore. It almost sounds like it's like a dying galaxy that people are trying to flee or something, or definitely the system that they're in. But
yeah, I get that impression too. It's well, you fly in. The whole thing's really creepy, and it does look otherworldly in a weird mundane way, but it still
yeah,
does. And you have
yeah,
like the statues that like are almost just jutting out of the ground, and
yeah,
like it seems like the whole thing's just been destroyed.
agreed. It's almost Old Republic-esque.
Yeah,
So then they go down to the surface and they meet the Grand Mothers, which are, I guess, the leaders of the Nightsisters and possibly the only living ones left.
yeah. I think they're the equivalent of whatever Mother Talzin was, and I guess they stayed
Yeah.
behind
I
where she
think
went.
I feel
Oh,
like they're above Mother Talzin.
it could be. They seem really like they're
Yeah,
really creepy.
yeah.
Getting a lot of horror vibes in a really cool way.
It's
From this
definitely a play
episode.
on like the Macbeth Three Witches, I think.
That, and I think their names in the credits are almost like literal one-to-one the name of the three like threads of fate from Greek mythology.
Yeah, yeah,
And the way they talk about loose threads and things like that in the episode is super creepy.
yeah,
And they got that reverb on their voice. They say that Sabine reeks of Jedi, which is
yeah.
a good
And
sign for her.
they said that. I was like, are you also? First of all, I mean, the fact that you smell Sabine seems interesting to me since she has like almost no Force ability. How do you know that she's a Jedi? I feel like it's like, did you just smell Balin and Shin, who probably do smell pretty similar to Jedi?
Yeah,
But
it could be.
maybe
It's
all
more
three of
probably
them
along
is
the
what
lines
they were
of
talking about.
yeah, they just sense the presence in the Force reminds them of Jedi that they've encountered in the past.
Yeah, and I would argue that it's all three of them, Balin, Shin, and Sabine, probably all have a similar smell in the Force or whatever. But they
Yeah.
end up locking up Sabine. Then after that, we get, I mean, just an absolutely epic shot of the Chimaera, Thrawn's Star Destroyer, coming in. To me, that was just like the most beautiful shot in the whole episode. Where
Yeah.
the gold-plated, pieced together Star Destroyer is coming in. It looks just absolutely wrecked. Like it's spent years. Obviously, it has spent years, but it is, it's spent a long time here, constantly getting patched and like fixed up a little by little, and they mend it or whatever. And then Thrawn comes out. He's got his whole army of, I don't think they're actual stormtroopers anymore. I mean, going into that a little bit, it's like a whole army of these guys. And I want to say, are they called like night troopers or something like that?
Yeah, that's what the caption said that they were. And something that I noticed that I thought was really cool about the cinematography is just the scope of it. Like
Yeah,
the shot
it
felt
felt
like
big.
like it was a movie. I felt like episode 5 also was super cinematic, but I feel like this particular episode felt large in a way that I don't even think the previous episodes were necessarily trying to capture as much. But like this one, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, you felt the scale and scope of it. And
Yeah.
then we had the organs of Thrawn's theme starting to play. And to me, that was just like, oh, damn. Like, we're really getting into it now. Thrawn starts, like, slowly walking up his line and everything. And then he greets the Nightsisters and Morgan, Elsbeth, and Balin and Shin. I thought that was a really interesting scene. I guess Sabine's there as well, and obviously he recognizes Sabine. Sabine is kind of a little snippy with them, which I think is really funny, because one of the things that she says is, you wouldn't understand essentially why I've come here. Out of love is what it is. And it's like kind of a dig at Thrawn, because him not understanding something is probably really gets under his skin, right? Because he's so logical and is someone who prides himself on literally thinking through everything, but it's literally something that he probably can't understand.
Yeah, and I also think she's on edge too because it's appearing more and more like Balin's not going to uphold his end of the bargain, and then he ends up doing that in sort of a
Not,
backhanded manner.
yeah,
Yeah, Thrawn, like, I didn't like immediately love how Thrawn looked, and not like anything really to do with the actor, but more something about the hair bugged
yeah,
me. But as soon as he started talking and like moving around, I was like, okay, I'm sold immediately. And it's the same voice, it's the same actor who did his voice in Rebels. For
yeah. His
people that don't
voice
know that.
is incredible. That is just an insanely good Thrawn voice, I think. And I agree with you. My original thought was I wasn't in love with his look, but I think it kind of makes sense for someone who's been on this planet for over a decade now and has just had a really hard time being there. Like, he probably wouldn't look his best. He probably looks like he's aged more than 10 years in
Yeah.
this amount of time, just due to the sheer hardship that he has had to probably endure on this planet.
Well, and the character is 70 years old canonically anyway. So I mean, it's not that big of a deal. But it's more just like the hair. I felt like they should have had like a deeper widow's peak, like his hair in the center of his head
Yeah.
no more. But that's like super nitpicky.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And I guess then they have that conversation.
And they end up honoring the deal of giving Sabine the mount to go find Ezra. And there's an interesting moment with Shin, I think, because for a second, Shin, I feel like, is concerned that Balin's not going to uphold his word. I don't know if you
Yeah.
caught that.
Yeah, she did seem concerned about that in a surprising way because
Yeah. She was like,
Her-
you're not going to honor that? And that's when Thrawn cut in and said, no, we're going to honor it. Don't worry. But
I do
backhandedly.
think like she's slowly becoming more complex because like power is important to her and alluring, but I feel like honor is also important to her. And Balin clearly hasn't communicated very much about himself to her.
Yeah, and they have
Which
an
is-
amazing scene, actually, Balin and Shin later, where Shin asks Balin directly, she's like, do you miss the order? And he says, I miss the idea of the order, which I thought was really interesting as a thought process for him, because I feel like that's how most of the audience views it too, right? We miss the Jedi Order and all the Jedi being around and everything, but really what it actually wasn't the idea of it.
Yeah, we miss the ideal of the Jedi, not how they behaved once the Clone Wars started, and probably even before that.
And
I thought that was really cool. And Thrawn sends them to follow Sabine and basically to kill her and Ezra.
yeah,
And I think that's also where Shin is not totally thrilled.
I agree.
And then from there, we get a lot of interesting conversations about. Well, Thrawn, first of all, doesn't seem very interested in Balin or Shin and keeping
Yeah,
them
he
alive.
does recognize Balin's name, though, right? He says, you must be General Balin Skoll.
It could be that he recognized them, or he deduced who he was based on his age and the fact that he used to be a Jedi,
It's
which would
possible.
also be very characteristic too, rather than him specifically knowing who he was.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. But anyway, they go and start tracking Sabine. Shin is not very pleased. She thinks that they should probably get off world too. She recognizes the haste at which everybody is trying to leave, which it seems kind of intense at the pace that they're trying to leave, right? Like, he's been there for over 10 years. What's another 3 or 4 days gonna really do? I would think that they would be in much less of a hurry to get off, but I mean, they're booking it as fast as they can, and I think Shin recognizes that. And then Balin mentions, I think, the very important piece of, like, don't you feel the presence? You can hear it, the whatever power is greater than them that's out here, which I thought was super interesting.
Yeah, he talked to her about how the power that Thrawn offers or the Empire would have offered is fleeting, and then like something that's here is true power if he's right. But he's still being pretty vague, not explaining what that is or what he thinks it is. So I'm very curious, and I really do hope we find out this season, because that's like,
Agreed.
and I would gander that whatever he senses here is something to do with why the remaining Nightsisters want to get off this planet so badly, and Thrawn as well.
I definitely agree. So I really want to see what he thinks is on this planet, because obviously there's something. They wouldn't be running for for no reason. So hopefully we'll find that out later in the season. But then cutting back to Sabine, she's got her little mount. She has a brief skirmish. She's able to kind of fend off those marauders.
Yeah, it was a cool little fight scene, and then they kind of move on.
She finds the little rock people who then end up leading her back to their little village, which is where we get finally revealed to Ezra.
Yes. Before we get into Ezra, I think some people were like confused about this. Like, oh, like Thrawn's been here for 10 years. How did Sabine find him in an hour? And it's like, well, if you were watching the episode, Thrawn explains that we will give you his last known coordinates. And for them to have last known coordinates, it's very heavily implied, if not explicitly so, that they are tracking him actively. And maybe they stopped at some point, but that's how she found him. That's why she went in that direction. That's where she was going.
Future kicking cutting in here because I had a thought after I recorded this with Ben, but I think there is a very likely chance that Thrawn did have Ezra's coordinates and knew exactly where he was, but didn't actually really have the resources to take him out. But then when Baylan and Shin arrived, he realized that he now had the resources to take them out, and he could get rid of these Jedi in one fell swoop.
And then the Noti, really cute, and recognized her rebellion symbol on her shoulder, and they I guess had Ezra's medallion or something, or he made it for them.
Yeah.
And then we see Ezra, who like literally jumped out of animation. It's so perfect.
Yeah,
it's kinda,
he is. I was gonna say that too. I totally agree.
He feels like sensibly aged up.
Agreed. He looks amazing, and I am just so freaking happy that he feels in character too. Like, that feels like Ezra. I was worried that we were going to get kind of like a Luke Skywalker episode 8 iteration of Ezra, where he's like jaded or something. He's like upset but he felt just like Ezra, I think, should feel.
Yeah, there wasn't like a bunch of stuff that happened off screen that we now have to reckon with. And the reason I like this so much is because I do think getting reintroduced to characters years later after they've experienced some sort of trauma makes a lot of sense. We didn't see at all really what happened with Luke, other than like the one thing they showed us in the movie.
Yeah.
But like, he was grouchy and grumpy before we got to that point. Ahsoka, I think, worked really well because the last time we saw her, Darth Vader just tried to kill her. So that probably opened, and she recently found out that they were one and the same person, Anakin and Darth Vader.
Yep.
And that it makes sense how she got there to there, just logically. So it didn't feel like it was that much of a leap. So and then here it's like, well, he made the choice to do this to save the galaxy and from Thrawn, and now he's himself but aged up, and he'll probably have more to tell us next episode. But I really it was refreshing just to have the character be the character, and there wasn't like a bunch of stuff that happened that just completely changed him that we didn't get to see. Then you have to use a bunch of time on that instead of progressing the narrative and the characters from that point. So
yeah, I love that. And then, I mean, as soon as she sees him, he's basically like, it worked, right? I saved the galaxy from Thrawn, didn't I? And Sabine says that, of course, yes, he did save the galaxy, and she's going to be very non-committal on exactly how she got there and her plans to get home.
Yeah. Some people, I guess, took issue with her not immediately explaining, but
I didn't take issue.
I think she wants to.
It makes total
sense.
No,
I didn't either. Yeah, and I think she wanted to enjoy the moment for a second.
Yeah,
plus
before Ezra gets upset that, oh wait, you have no way home.
Yeah, they have 3 days. I assume that if they even get back, which I guess we can get into the theories at the end, but that they will smuggle themselves on board Thrawn's vessel, or they'll get on the Ahsoka ship.
Yeah,
but
Ahsoka ship's not capable of intergalaxy travel, though.
True, but the whales are here, so unless Thrawn kills all the whales, which I guess is possible,
or they're going there to die and they don't jump back.
Yeah, though, maybe they're creating a map in the ship.
Yeah, that's possible.
I think even if they had like the route down, they probably still couldn't travel in Ahsoka ship. They would need
a bigger hyperspace engine. Yeah.
And now we also have it confirmed that the ring was that size and that shape specifically, so they could transport the Chimaera back.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't put that together, but you're absolutely right. That, of course.
So that makes a lot of sense. It was really just cool to see Ezra, blue eyes, still has the scars, like looks.
Yeah,
exactly
I noticed that too. The 2 scars on his face. I love that detail was still there.
And they just had like a warm reunion, so that was really sweet, especially with where it seems like this is all going. It's about to like really hit the fan.
Yeah, it definitely
I don't
is.
See a lot of positive developments for our heroes in the next 2 episodes.
No, I think it's going to be a tough road ahead here. I think going back actually to Thrawn, a couple things that he mentioned was he sends Balin and Shin after Ezra and Sabine, and he's like, I don't really care if they kill each other or they just get stranded here. Which initially to me, like, that seems almost out of character for Thrawn to waste at least Balin and Shin. Like, those are essentially assets for him, and just to throw them away seems to me a little bit out of character. But if you put it in perspective of the fact that he just straight up does not like and does not trust Jedi, especially after what Ezra did to him, I think it makes sense that he'd rather just take them off the board entirely than try to use them at all.
That, and they're mercenaries, so they have no real loyalty to him.
Yeah, that's definitely
So I think that makes sense in that way. But when we get back to Thrawn and Morgan, they're having a conversation, and then the Great Mothers say, "Hey, like, there's a Jedi approaching,"
true. Yeah,
and then
he immediately deduces that it's Ahsoka.
yeah, because I guess they at some point had a conversation giving him the exposition of what happened.
Yeah,
Like,
like,
Balin
Ahsoka's
said that
dead.
Ahsoka was dead. I think that probably further drives his point of not trusting Balin so much, even though I don't think Balin was explicitly lying. He
No, I don't
probably
think so
thought
either.
Ahsoka was dead. It's interesting that he doesn't know who she is, which makes sense. I mean, in the book, him and Anakin never talk about her, so
Yep.
that's not unreasonable. But then he immediately asks all the right questions.
Yep.
Like, there's no weird plot contrivance where he doesn't ask everything that he's supposed to.
Yeah,
So that was
and
really
him
good.
asking who her master was is like, ah, shit. When he finds that out, it's gonna be really interesting. I feel like that's gonna
Yeah,
be a huge piece of knowledge for him.
he's definitely going to try to use that against her.
Yeah, I think that's where her talking to Force Ghost Anakin is really gonna have made a huge impact on her to kind of overcome those mind games that Thrawn's getting ready to throw at her.
Yeah, I think that's the case as well. It is interesting with, like, ghosts and spirits and stuff, and how the Nightsisters have some command over that. So I don't know that the Nightsisters know everything, the Great Mothers. It'd be interesting if they tried to conjure Vader's spirit or something to
Interesting.
hurt her, and then Vader's spirit shows up and it's just Anakin. He's not
And
playing
he's not
ball. I
Vader.
read that. I read that on Reddit, and I was like, that is a great theory. That is probably not going to happen, but that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the last time Thrawn saw Vader was, at kind of the height of Vader's power.
Exactly. So I think we're going to get a pretty interesting confrontation next week, or maybe even the week after, but I think next week.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty likely. I also, going into a little bit of theories, all of the night troopers. I have seen this theory a lot, and I'm kind of inclined to agree that most of those people are dead, or, there's not living beings in those suits of armor.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, especially after seeing Marek, and he was just like a spirit or something, a remnant of a former soul. So I feel like there is a pretty good chance that those guys are all dead. They look super ominous, and they just generally don't feel very human. And I know stormtroopers often don't feel that way, but these guys feel even less so.
Yeah, they're definitely the creepiest trooper variant we've had maybe ever.
Yeah, because I feel like zombies. And
Yeah,
I wonder if any of them, or there may be some cargo or something of the Nightsisters transporting some maybe dead Nightsisters away from the planet to resurrect them on Dathomiri or something when they return. I could see something like that. I've heard that as a theory, that there maybe even some of the ones in the Stormtrooper armor is just been supplying Thrawn with this kind of force and power to give him power on the condition that he bring them back to Dathomir where they can be resurrected or something like that. I know that's kind of getting out there, but I really don't feel like it's too far out there considering all of the stuff we've already seen in this season.
Yeah, I think the next two episodes are going to get even weirder, and I'm super here for that. And I found it interesting because we do see that, well, the Great Mother specifically want Thrawn to bring those bodies onto the Chimaera.
Yeah.
So it seems like their power is limited to a degree on the planet that they're on. I'm just making that, maybe not deduction, but that assumption based on, why couldn't they resurrect those bodies if that's what they're doing with them on that planet?
Yeah.
But it sounds like they want to restore them in a more meaningful capacity, maybe.
Yeah.
I think we'll find out really soon.
And
But
even if you do restore him on that wasteland of a planet, like what? There's no resources there. Like, what's the purpose of that?
yeah, that's true. There wouldn't be like a huge reason to do that, and it's probably, you know, you don't have to worry about feeding them or anything until you get back.
Yeah.
So there could just be other like logistical reasons for not doing it sooner. But I do find that really interesting. I'm very curious to see where that goes. I thought Balin and Shinra stand out also because we get a bit more information about what Balin's thinking, what he wants. We still don't know the specifics, but it's something about wanting to go to the beginning. And
Yeah.
I'm
He
not
wants.
sure what that means contextually because
I don't know what that means either, but it seems like he explicitly said the cycle of power essentially has been the rise and fall of Jedi over and over again. So going back to the beginning, maybe something to do with the world between worlds or something of that nature, and like literally going back to the beginning through time, or just like gathering some sort of power to. I don't really know what power he could gather in the present that would, make a huge impact in the galaxy.
yeah, he seems to want to undo, or maybe not undo, but change things going forward. It sounds like he wants to end the cycle. I don't know how he does that.
Yeah,
I've heard some people theorize that he wants to like kill the Force. I don't think that's what his plan is
that would
at
be
all.
crazy. But
I think that's something that Darth Kree, if I mispronounced that, I'm sorry, did in the Old Republic, or wanted to do in the Old Republic
interesting.
games, but I don't think that's what his plan is. There's a few other interpretations of the beginning, and I feel like maybe even more likely. There's this non-technically canon Book of the Sith that exists where Mother Talzin talks about the worship of the Mortis gods, and
Interesting.
the Mortis gods, and I can't recall if it's in the book or if it's from the Mortis arc episode in the Clone Wars, where they're called the beginning, or the middle, the beginning, and the end. The middle being the father, the beginning being the daughter, and who's the light embodiment of the light side, and then the end being the son, who's the embodiment of darkness.
Yeah,
And so it could have something to do with the Mortis gods.
I've heard a little bit of that. Like maybe he's searching for the sun.
It could be that a way to access their realm, maybe. I know a dropped plot point from the sequel trilogy, like pretty early on when it was still Colin Trevorrow's movie, was the final battle was going to take place on Mortis between the Force users,
Oh
which is
wow,
pretty cool.
that is really
And
cool.
so they might be kind of picking a little bit of that back up.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So it could be something along those lines, or it could be setting up a threat for like way in the future after the sequel trilogy.
Yeah,
Whatever's on this planet could be what was calling to Palpatine in the Aftermath books. It might not have been Exegol. He might have found out about Exegol like way before, or maybe found out about both, or maybe it's not related to Palpatine at all, but there could be something more going on. Another theory could be that it's Abeloth, who's like, I guess, the embodiment of chaos in
interesting.
relation to the quote-unquote Mortis gods. I don't know that they're explicitly gods, by the way. I think that's just what the
No.
Nightsisters think they are.
I don't think so either. They're often called that in like lore, but that's like mythology. Like within the Star Wars universe, people view them as gods. But even in the Mortis arc, the father says we had to leave the Jedi Temple because we were pretty powerful and we couldn't be like associated with that anymore. He explicitly says that.
Did he?
Yeah, I just watched the episode because I'm doing a video on it right now.
Okay. I was like, I don't remember that. That's
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
Yeah,
So they were
he
probably
explicitly
Jedi
says
at
we had
some
to
point.
leave the temple.
Or they were Force users of
Yeah,
some
I think
kind.
they kind of ascended a little bit and became more one with the Force, but I don't think they're gods. Like, I think they've ascended past what normal Jedi could ever think to do, but I don't think that they are gods.
No, and the reason I don't think they're gods, because if they were, unless they're like Greek gods where they're extremely flawed, then what the father says in the arc would have to be true in his perception of the balance of force, which would be mastering his children.
Yeah.
But we know that the concept of a gray Jedi doesn't really exist. There's just the force, and that using the dark side is about domination and control. It's not like a yin and yang situation. I'm very curious about where that's going in particular. I would say honestly that's like the most exciting element to me. I am looking forward to Thrawn and Ahsoka's like mental confrontation.
Yeah, definitely me too.
But I really don't know, because this isn't going to end with any like narrative resolution. This feels more and more like this is going to end on a cliffhanger. But hopefully they get into what Balin's up to.
Yeah, well, I think it has to end on a cliffhanger because Dave Filoni's movie is supposed to be about Thrawn, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So they're not going to defeat Thrawn in this season. I don't think there's any chance of that happening. And it also, narratively, would be pretty lame if you introduce him in episode 6 and then defeat him in episode 8.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I never thought he was going to lose. So I knew that, but I'm more the resolution in terms of, like, I want to know what Balin's up to at least.
Yeah,
I don't want them to end the season without getting that information.
I think we're going to get some, like, a little bit of closure on, like, Ahsoka's willingness to train Sabine and Sabine accepting her role as an apprentice.
Yes, and then probably see Sabine use the Force in a more, like,
some
directly
sort of
observable way.
I think so too. Also,
and yeah,
I was just going to say, last episode we talked about the voices that Morgan Elsbeth was hearing, and they directly answered that in this, that it was the other sisters.
Yeah, so now everyone can stop worrying, like,
that's what she was hearing.
That's how they knew where Thrawn was.
Yeah,
they needed the map because they needed the hyperspace lane, and they didn't know how to get to so she probably already knew that's where they were. She just didn't know how to get there.
Yeah,
and that's what they needed to know.
She knew the planet, so I assume that she knew that all of this existed and everything was there. She just didn't have a way to get there.
And they were probably the ones that told her to go seek the map and all that good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. But overall, I mean, I think it was a really awesome episode. I mean, I am loving this series so much. I think it's amazing the amount of lore and world building they've done throughout the whole thing. I'm very pleased with it. I think anyone that doesn't like this show just doesn't like Star Wars.
Or, like, doesn't want to.
Or doesn't understand it. Like,
yeah, there's like a group of people online who just, like, there's always, like, some amount of negativity for any Star Wars. Some of it I can understand, like, some of the criticism for
and nothing's perfect. There's always flaws in everything, but overall the criticism, enjoyment, like, you should be enjoying this. If you're not enjoying this, then I don't know what you want in a Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't either. I think some people don't really like Star Wars. They just like the aesthetics, which is fine. It's like a valid way to enjoy something. But I feel like there's just a group of people there, I think, that are determined to not like anything just because Disney owns it. Like, I've seen random people be like, oh, Dave Filoni sucks. And I'm like, you weren't saying that, like, when the Clone Wars was airing. So I don't believe you. I think it's literally just some people define their existence by things that they don't like. And I think that's really strange and sad.
Also, I could see Shin turning to the light side by the end of the series or sometime.
Yeah, she seems like kind of skeptical because she's sort of seeing Balin, who has previously demonstrated himself as pretty honorable, keeping to his word, that, he's kind of going back on what he told Sabine about no harm would come to her. And obviously, I mean, they still might not try to kill them. I could see an unlikely alliance between Ahsoka, Ezra, Sabine, and them two, basically against whatever Thrawn's doing.
Yeah, I've heard a couple theories that maybe Thrawn ends up killing Balin in some manner, directly or indirectly, and that kind of turns Shin towards, Ahsoka and Sabine to, like, join them and take down Thrawn or something like that.
That could be cool too. I honestly really have no idea where it's going.
I don't know either. I like to speculate though.
Yeah, there isn't, like, a lot to, like, we have these crumbs, and it's definitely building to something. I don't think Dave Filoni writes mysteries without knowing the answer to them.
Agreed.
I think even, like, stuff like the World Between Worlds and Mortis itself, I think him and George Lucas probably know the exact explanation for those things. They'd like to keep it ambiguous because the discussion, I think, is fun.
Yeah, I agree.
So my point being that I don't think he set up that Balin's looking for something without knowing what that is.
Agreed. Yeah, I have no doubts that he knows exactly what that is.
Something interesting about Thrawn, though, real quick, is that one, he knows Anakin because they had a whole book together, and him as Darth Vader seemed to lament the fact that he turned into Darth Vader a little bit. And so I think that's how it's can directly come up. Maybe he'll even use his time as Darth Vader against Ahsoka in that way, like just talk about all the horrible things that he saw him do. Which I don't even know that he explicitly did a ton of horrible things in the book that they were together in, but
no, they didn't. There
could have been more.
They mostly took down, like, raiders and things.
Yeah, so I'm really interested to see that. And for those that don't know, Thrawn's, like, whole motivation for even joining the Empire in the first place was to protect the Chiss from an external threat, which is the Gresk, which is sort of like the replacement for the Yuuzhan Vong in Legends. I'm very curious to see if that's going to be brought up. I mean, I hope it is, because I imagine he wouldn't be super thrilled with the Imperial Remnant situation. I mean, he must know about it, because if Morgan Elsbeth was in contact with the Great Mothers, then I think that he would know the state of the galaxy if they
I
relayed
would
that
think
information
so,
to him.
too.
So his goal, I think, is going to be to create an army of some kind and then take it back to the Chiss. But how he goes about that, I'm going to find it interesting. I imagine he wouldn't be thrilled with the Imperial Remnant, as they're
No,
like
I agree. I mean,
pretty.
it's pretty worthless, and the New Republic is definitely worthless. So it's so interesting to me. Like, I really want to know what his goal is.
Yeah.
'Cause his goal is not just to become Palpatine, right? Like, that's not, should not be Thrawn's ultimate goal.
No, his goal the whole time has been pretty singularly focused, and that's why he's
Yeah.
like been so ruthless and calculating. Is that his only goal is to go back and protect the Chiss. So everything else is sort of what he views as the quickest means of making that happen.
Yeah.
Still a bad guy, but he's a bad guy with a motivation that you can understand.
Yeah.
And I do hope that they bring that up, because I don't see him having interest in just going to go conquer the New Republic just because. But it makes sense that Hera and Ahsoka and them wouldn't know what Thrawn's motivations
I don't
are.
think
So they would
anybody
just
knows what
assume that
Thrawn's
he's.
motivations are. Anybody in the galaxy there's like almost nobody left that knows that.
Yeah, exactly. So they would just assume that he's coming back to start a war with the New Republic, and he might
Yeah.
do that, but I don't. It's not going to be just to destroy the New Republic, because he has some sort of like ideological loyalty to the Empire or something like that.
Agreed.
So lots of questions. Hope we get some answers in the next 2 episodes, and I hope those episodes are long. I've really been enjoying like the 45-minute-ish
Same.
episodes.
They've been great. They've provided a great like balance between still keeping mystery but also actually showing stuff.
Yeah, I feel like the dialogue is so like there's no fluff. It's like everything that is said serves a purpose or emotion or
Yep. It's very
narrative.
deliberate.
And I was thinking about this, how the fact that the Great Mothers are there, the Nightsisters, and that this is their ancient homeworld, that's a bunch of like lore that was established that I don't think would normally be covered in a movie. But
Agreed.
the way that it was executed was so natural, because they
Yeah.
needed to go there anyway to get Thrawn, and then
Seamless.
those explanations sort of seamless, exactly. Reminds me of the world building of the prequels a little bit. So I thought that was really cool. So I hope see more of that, and just to get those answers.
Yeah, me as well. Well, I think that's about all I have to say about this episode until next week. You good, Ben?
Yeah, I'm good.
Long-winded way of saying we have thoroughly enjoyed this so far. So let us know down in the comments, how did you feel about episode 6 and where do you think it's going? I'm Keegs, and I will talk to you all next time for some more Star Wars content.